Hey, Dream Chasers, this is Amy J. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to episode 230 of Chasing Dreams. Yeah, I said it, 230. Crazy, crazy. Today's guest is Jason Harris. He's the CEO of the award-winning creative agency Mechanism, co-founder of the Creative Alliance, and the author of the national bestseller, The Soulful Art of Persuasion. Jason works closely with brands through a blend of soul and science to create provocative campaigns that engage audiences. Jason has been named in the top 10 most influential social impact leaders, as well as the 4A's list of 100 people who make advertising great. His methods are studied in cases at Harvard Business School. And I got to tell you, it has to be something special for him to break my no businesses or entrepreneur rule for the show. And he is. He is. Guys, I read Jason's book. It's phenomenal. And so I wanted him to be on the show because I thought it's something, what he talks about isn't just for business. It's not just for selling. The phases, the activities that he talks about are things we can use in our day-to-day life to become better. So the reason Jason's on the show, because of the impact he's doing on self-improvement, frankly. I think everybody should read his book. It's great. And we talk about the 4 phases, which are, I don't want to give it away, but which are overall important, I think, in each of us living our own honest and authentic life, frankly. And so I want you to listen carefully to what he says and how he talks about how we can improve ourselves and what we can do to be better individuals. All right, so check it out.
This is Jason Harris, and you're listening to Chasing Dreams with Amy J.
Easy peasy. Hey, Jason, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Really glad to be here.
You know, you wrote a book, and it caught my eye for a number of reasons. One, because of the wording, The Soulful Art of Persuasion. And one, it's very poetic, the name, I got to say. It really,
I thank you. I haven't heard that before, but I appreciate that.
Really? Soulful Art of Persuasion. I think it's it's really there. And, you know, I had made a promise to myself and my audience that I wouldn't do anything more on businesses and people who do businesses. But there was something about your book that was persuasive that caught my eye because I think it's more about, it can also be applied to individuals. Yeah. And that really spoke to me because you talk about originality, you talk about empathy, you talk about, these are your tenets, generosity,
and
soulfulness, right?
Yeah,
so those four areas. But before we get to the book, have you always thought this way? Have you always thought about being persuasive soulfully? Like, where did this come from?
No, I certainly have not always thought this way. But I did. I run an advertising agency. It's called Mechanism with a K. And I've been doing that for about 14 years. And before that, I've sort of always been an entrepreneur. I started another business before that. There was a production company business. And I'm an avid reader of business books. And so I was trying to crystallize. It's not like I had these 4 principles and I followed them my whole career. Mm-hmm. And that's how I, built my successful company. That's not how it happened. It was much more for me about diving into other books and reading about how other success stories and other entrepreneurs, what their philosophies were. And some of the stuff I sort of jived with, and some of it I said, I don't really think that's how you build business. And a lot of it was transactional thinking. Mm-hmm. And I just never subscribed to that philosophy. So as the book took me about 3 years to write, and as I wrote it, I sort of crafted these pillars that I believe in, and some of them I did naturally, and some of them were learned behaviors over my career. So I wasn't born with these principles, and that's the way I always operated.
Right.
It was really in being in the business world, what I found worked, and what I found worked to persuade, but then what I found also filled me inside and gave me a sense of purpose. But that developed over time. And then I crafted, what is the context of the book. And so there's a lot of this stuff. And for the listeners, and if they pick up the book and read it, there's areas like for me, I've always been a pretty good storyteller. Like storytelling is in my DNA. That's part of being original and part of that principle. But in terms of generosity, that was a learned behavior. That was something that I had to learn. I wasn't a naturally generous person. I wasn't necessarily generous with my time or my connections or my advice or even giving things to people. And so that was something that I had to learn over time and to develop. But I found that that characteristic helped for personal and business success. And so a lot of these principles can be learned, and that's why I say they're habits that make anyone a master influencer, because you
Mhm.
can actually learn these things by repeating them, and they become who you are over time.
And we're going to talk more about the pillars that you have. But before I do that, as you've written this book and it's come out and people have read it and adopted some of this behavior, what has the reception been for people? Have they related to it? Have they changed and seen a significant success or a change in their behavior and mindset?
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten really good feedback on the book because it is a different take
Mhm.
on how to do business, and so people have responded to that and have really liked that and adopted these principles. And a lot of these examples that I have in the book are I tell you how to take that action. I give examples, and I have sort of a process of how you can take some of these actions. And so that has been well received because it isn't sort of an abstract way of thinking. It's really actionable, and that's what I found. Those are the books that I like, and that's what
Mhm.
I found that people really respond to. They're like, okay, great. You say empathetic, and you talk about being having empathy and what that means. Now, how do I take action on that? And I think that's really what people have responded to, is that there's ways you can do that and learn behavior.
And I think it's that learning, right? I mean, I think you're absolutely right. One of the reasons I relate to self-help improvement books is when there's something I can do with it. It's not all
Yeah,
theoretical. And you give these habits and examples to help people kind of practice. And it's like, okay, you're not stuck because you don't know, what do I do with this thought process here? And
yeah,
you help them kind of along the way.
yeah. That's right. How did you find the book, by the way?
Well, so Jess actually told me that's how I found you first, is when she
Oh,
reached
nice.
out.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh,
And
good.
so I dove in deeper. I saw your interview with Lewis Howes and
Yeah,
I haven't had a chance to finish the book, but it really caught my eye because, one of the things we talk about with chasing dreams is being true to yourself and knowing what your identity and dream is and make sure it's yours and not necessarily someone else. And I feel like, in going through your book, there's something about honesty and
yeah,
authenticity that I
yeah,
think people should read. And guys, I'll have the link to the book in the show notes, so make sure you check that out. If you hadn't realized that I support this book,
yeah.
you should check this out because you talk about authenticity, you talk about um, being genuine and an original, right? And so that's something I think people struggle with. And so when you wrote that section, can you talk a little bit about why it's so important to abide by this principle of originality?
Yeah, sure. So, I do subscribe to the famous Oscar Wilde quote, "Be yourself, everyone else is taken." And for a long time, when I had started my career, and I think like a lot of people when they get into business, they're trying to model behavior by other people that they see. And they're trying to see what's successful, and somebody who's high up the chain, what do they do, and what are their mannerisms? Are they loud and confident? Are they quiet and do the work? Are they um, going for the kill in the cell? What ways do people operate? And you kind of learn that. And there's a lot of, even when I started my career, I would read a lot of other books that were a lot more about, when selling or when building your clients, try to mirror and match and try to be like them.
Mhm.
And you think to get ahead in business, you have to be like the boss, or have the boss like you. And what I found to be successful in business is that your personal idiosyncrasies and the things that make you stand out and the things that make you different. It's not much different. I'm an ad man, so it's not much different than building a brand. If you're going to build a brand that is a sea of sameness and is like everything else, it's not going to go very far. And just like you as a person, if you're trying to adapt to your environment and blend in, you're going to really not go as far as you could if you are putting your full self out there and being vulnerable and letting people see who you are and realizing that by doing that, they can be vulnerable too. And you build a much deeper connection because you're opening. It doesn't mean you have to like the same things or have the same viewpoints, but it means that you're able to express yourself and say, this is what I believe in, and this is who I am, and these are some weird things about me, and these are some, fun things about me. And it allows them to do the same. And that really just helps you become an original person. Another aspect of that, which I talked about a minute ago, is this idea of storytelling. And the power of storytelling, I can't emphasize enough. If you can tell a story, whether it's a personal story with a point of view or an ending that means something to you, whether it's a story from a book you read or an allegory or a movie, collecting these stories to make your point in personal life or in professional life is super powerful. And that is a really good way to persuade. But it also, in telling these stories, tells someone something about you because you're telling a story about the things that you like and the things that you care about. And so you're kind of doing both with that. So really storytelling is part of being an original person.
I think we, with the advent and limiting beliefs, right? I think a lot of us, would you say, take for granted the stories we have within us?
Yeah, definitely. And I think we forget the stories we have within us.
Oh, 100%.
And I'm always a fan of having that journal. And sometimes I slack and I forget about it and I don't do it. But having that idea of like writing down those moments of your life that meant something to you when you close your eyes that are like super memorable, and then crafting that story around those moments to make your point is really powerful. But I think there's so many stories that we have about our lives, but we're always sort of living in the what's next, the next moment.
Oh, yeah.
And we forget about those stories that we have deep within us that have molded us to who we are, and they're really powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we give them enough credit, and we don't realize how much those stories actually connect us with the people we're talking to, and how even something as simple as my grandmother making me tea at 4 p.m. and how she would do it, and then realizing that someone else probably has a grandmother or someone who made them tea at 4 p.m. and it's a commonality for them, about love of a grandmother, and you just don't realize it's such a mundane story.
It's so true. No, it's so true. And what that meant to you about your grandmother, what that taught you about building like consistency or time to reflect or get together. It's super powerful. I have this thing I do with my kids that's a gratitude journal. We do it.
I love it.
It's not original. Like everyone has a lot of people have a gratitude journal, but I do it the same time every week. It made me think of that when you see, this is how it works. You told me like a grandma story, and now I'm telling you a story about me.
Awesome.
Right. And so it's like a good point of practice here. But the gratitude journals we do every Sunday, and it's been hard during quarantine because they're in another state and I'm here, and we do a lot of FaceTiming. But we have this journal and we do this every Sunday, and we will write down stories once a week. And so they have stories when they're, obviously little kids, and I tell stories of my life. We tell each other a story every week, and it has to come around to something that you're grateful for that week, but it's the art of storytelling. And then when we look back at these, if we look like at the journals from last year and we read them this year, they'll remember all of these moments in time and all these stories because they wrote them down, and they categorize it and they put it in a book. And that's, to me, is the power of repetition, and it's trying to train them to be good storytellers. And it's once a week. It's not every
Right.
day for 20 minutes, do this activity. It's a very simple exercise, but it's super powerful, because the power of writing down a story, and it floods all the memory banks with like what I was feeling in that moment.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you've
Yeah.
instilled that in them at such a
Yeah.
young early age. I know my
Yeah.
mom has told me, "Hey, journal, journal, journal." And you're going to wish you had journaled if you hadn't. And for sure, I wish I had journaled more as a
Yeah.
child, as a teenager, and remembered some of the stories I went through in the experiences. So, the next generation, I hope I will encourage them to do the same thing. Is, what, like you said, it doesn't have to be every day, once a week, just capture some of the stories that you've had. And it's powerful to remember those things, because memory only lasts so long.
It's so true. I had an ex-girlfriend who found, this just happened like last week. She found, I haven't talked to her in like, I don't know, 10 years, but she found a box of letters that I had written her.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and this is like from high school. And I wrote this letter about wanting to, I can't, one day I want to open my own company, and I'm an entrepreneur and I want to start my own thing. And I don't think I used the word entrepreneur, but I used, I wanted to own my own company.
Right.
And she sent me all these letters back. And the memories, like, I totally forgot about that. Didn't even know that I even had that thought in high school. But reading through it, I'm like, oh man, that is like such a great story of remembering that, because an old high school flame that I hadn't talked to in forever, I wrote that down in a letter, and she sent it to me, and that's the story is just like,
That's
it
so
really
awesome.
woke me up. It was awesome. Yeah.
That's awesome to just kind of bring yourself back to that time. Do you remember writing that or anything like?
I do. I remember it now that I
Oh,
have
wow.
it, but I hadn't thought about it in
Sure. No. Yeah.
forever.
But it's like a
Yeah.
trigger.
Yeah, it's a trigger. Now I remember the whole, like, when I wrote it and what I was thinking about. Yeah,
I
really,
love it.
it's really powerful. Yeah.
I love it. So let's talk about your second principle.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm out of order. Generosity.
No, you're in the right order. Yeah.
Okay. Generosity, because it's not something people often talk about, because we have such a me mindset sometimes, that to hear that being generous is something that can not only help you, but help your business or just help you in all things is counterintuitive a little bit. So what do you
Yeah.
mean by being generous?
So, and this was the one that throughout my career, I have had the hardest time with. Um, it's this idea of giving something away at every interaction, and thinking about when you cross paths with someone, leaving them a little bit better off than before they cross paths with you. And they're simple things, and um, it could be advice, it could be time, it could be counsel, it could be um, this idea of giving them something. And it could be, and even for your friends, giving something away can be a text message from an article that that they'll care about, and instead of posting it on social for everyone to read, you do a one-to-one message to them, because they care about, what are those like animals behind you, the little,
Oh, the Funkos?
yeah, okay, so you love Funkos. If I read something about Funkos, I'll text you
Mm-hmm.
about the new series that's coming out, or how they're changing, or what they're doing for marketing, or whatever it might be. That's me, like, giving something to you, which is so simple. It's not like buying wine and sending chocolates. It's me letting you know that I'm thinking about you, and that I know things that you care about, and interests that you have. And that's sort of what I mean by giving something away. It can be gifts. It can be thoughts. It can be letting someone know that you're thinking about them. It can be advice. It can be contacts. But this idea of just trying to be a generous person, for me, has really helped me become successful, because people want to work with those types of people, and
Yeah.
people want generous people around them. And you feel like you're giving things away, and it's not quid pro quo,
Mm-hmm.
but it will come back with compound interest, and you don't know when or how. It just does. People have to trust me. It just does. It just does.
Well, it also
So
sounds like
yeah.
you're saying is do it without the expectation of return, but the return's going to come.
That's right.
Right.
The return will come in surprising and magical ways, but you can't have the expectation, I did this for you, what are you going to do for me?
I scratch your back, now you scratch mine. It doesn't work.
It's like, hey, you got an itch, I'm going to scratch it for you.
Mm-hmm.
End of story. That's it.
It's like karma, right? You're kind of putting it out in the world, such good, positive vibes that, I mean, I love the concept of it because I'm a firm believer that, with every positive action, we're making the world a better place.
I love that.
It's impacting one person, but you've made their day by thinking of them, right? Regardless of how you were generous, right? You gave plenty of examples. Pick one. You've made them think, hey, somebody's thinking about me.
Yeah, it's so good. And there's so many. Well, there's a great example. I have an example in the book that's a Ben Franklin example, where he was he never graduated school. He was a lawmaker in Philadelphia. He was in the Philadelphia chamber of business chamber or legislation branch, and there was a really well-educated, well-to-do lawmaker that would always heckle Ben Franklin and try to tear him down. And Ben Franklin, instead of going after this guy, and this is what's known as the Ben Franklin effect, he simply asked him he asked him if he could borrow a book that he knew this man had in his library. And by borrowing that book, he created this connection with him. Wow. where he created a connection with him where he had done a favor for Ben Franklin, and he felt that he was connected because he felt he was being generous to Ben Franklin. And then they had this connection and they became lifelong friends. But it was the idea of Ben Franklin knowing, if I ask someone of someone and they do something for me, we're going to have a connection. And that's really another attribute. And that's really today known as the Ben Franklin effect, which sounds really crazy because you wouldn't think of asking something from someone as an act of generosity, but it really is building a bond. It's you being open. Yeah, it's you being open enough to ask for favors. Mm-hmm. It's also another form of generosity.
I love that. I've never heard it expressed in either the story or the fact that it's a Ben Franklin effect. I'm a firm believer, like when I have, before this whole COVID and we all started sheltering, if there was ever an engagement or an event I put on and my friends would come, people would be like, don't ask them to do all the work. We can do it. I'm like, people like to feel helpful though. People want to feel
a great example,
right? Like they want to be a part of something. And so I'm always a part of, hey, let's just ask them to help do something. Because, then it's the party's success is their success. And I just think people like to feel connected. And that's a great way to put it.
That's an idea. What you're talking about also is a collaboration imperative. It's this idea of like, we're going to do this thing together and you're going to feel involved. Like I always hate when I go to someone's house and I say, what can I bring? And they're like, nothing. They're like, I got
just
it.
Yourself.
They're like, I got it. I'm like, come on. Like I love that idea of it makes people participate in whatever the activity is. I think that's really a good way to look at it.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. So the third principle, it's not that I struggle with it. I like to think I'm good at empathy, but I think the world, especially now in today's climate, and we're recording this in June, guys. So in this climate of times, I think empathy is a very hard thing for people to get their heads around. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that and how sometimes there are lost causes and sometimes you can work with people?
Yeah, of course. There's lost causes and people are going to have their beliefs that will never match yours all the way. But I think in the time we live in, empathy is in real short supply. And what I always think about is, as humans, we're 99.9% the same DNA. So we're really, really the same at the end of the day. I mean, there's things that obviously make us different. We have different viewpoints. We have different values.
Sure.
But for the most part, we are all coming from the same need state. We need the same things to feel secure, to feel safe, to feel loved. Those are human attributes that we want. Of course, there's like some psychos, and there's some people that, whether how they were brought up or just born that way, that are on the outliers. But in general, we all have the same needs. And really, to me, empathetic is about developing a natural curiosity for others. And it's about trying to listen a little bit more, and try to understand people and what's behind the things they believe in and what makes them tick. And to me, that's really important. I had, as an example, I had a friend who, we'll get into discussions about immigration policy. And I mean, I'm a pretty liberal person in general. This particular person was not, and was anti-immigration, and I just could never really understand it. And as I started thinking about putting on my humanity, empathetic hat, I really was like, okay, well, besides telling me why the policy is bad for America, what is behind it? Like, why do you have that firm belief? And it stemmed from him being, his parents lost their job to well, they felt like they lost their job to a family of immigrants that did the job less expensive than them, and his family became homeless for a period of time and were on the streets. And sort of that stuck with him as a kid, and was a really powerful device that wasn't, it's not the immigration at large or people at large, but it was like one particular micro experience. But that's where he has his long held belief from, is that experience. And if you can understand that and what's behind it, you can have a little more empathy, you can understand it more, and you can try to reason both points of view. You might not persuade them and get them all the way over to your side, but you're coming from at least a base of understanding versus just like talking over each other. And so I think it's really trying to develop a curiosity about people and what's behind the beliefs they have.
I love that, because it's so easy and so quick, right? It's a lot faster to just judge them and paint them with a broad stroke of they are just, some may say racist, some may just, paint them incorrectly.
Could say racist, yeah,
right?
Definitely.
And some will just paint them as people who hate for no reason. But what you did in that example, and is a great example, because guys, if you dug deeper, you took the time to dig deeper. And I think that's something all of us, regardless of what our beliefs are, we should do with one another, is dig deeper, because it might be learned, and maybe we can unlearn it. Like you said, you might not be able to persuade them, but you never know unless you give them that time and respect to find out what it is underneath lying. I don't think I would have asked. That's amazing.
And so I'll never walk in your shoes. You'll never walk in my shoes. I didn't walk in his shoes, but that's really what it's about, is trying to position yourself as if you did. And I think that really is important. And then really another part of empathy is this idea of collaboration that we started to talk about, but really this idea of seeking out collaborations is really trying to reach out to people and not try to do everything on your own, but really try to ask for help, try to get favors from people, try to, if someone asks you for help, understand that they need help too. But that idea of collaboration is really important. And building, if you're building a business or you're doing a project, really trying to get others on board and seeking out collaborations is really an important aspect of being empathetic.
Yeah, I think it's one that it's not easy. I mean, I think you mentioned that generosity was your challenge earlier. I think empathy, in that sense, in those situations and scenarios, would be my challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And
why do you say that? It doesn't seem like I don't get that vibe.
Well, I can be empathetic, yes, but like if we use these examples of today's society and talking to people, with the current temperature and mentality of people, oddly enough, there are a lot of immigrants a lot of South Asians who don't understand why people are frustrated with Black Lives Matter, or just understand what the problem is. And so talking to them, and I can be like, I do the jump to conclusions of, you don't understand. And so I think I need to do more of what you said, is listen and try to dig deeper.
Yeah,
Like,
try to dig deeper.
yeah, I think that's the, like, I can be empathetic to people, but I think there's always place and room to learn and grow.
Totally.
Right.
I think that's an act of, it's also an act of generosity, is this idea
That's a good
of
point.
trying to be empathetic, because you're taking the time to listen and learn, and you're realizing we all come from this common human place.
Hmm.
But if you brush them off and you like bucket them,
Yeah.
I think that's rushing to judgment too quickly. And we're living in this fake news era, and this era of like echo chambers with social media.
Yeah.
It further pushes us into our own way of thinking that supports it and reinforces it,
Hmm.
and it's much harder to bridge. That's why the political dynamic we have, they just can't
It's
say anything. Yeah, they can't say anything bad about Trump, and the Republicans will never backtalk Trump, and the Democrats can never say anything good about Trump, and they can never say anything good about each other. And it's just, the country further and further gets divided, and we do that in our own little communities also.
right. And I think what you said is very powerful. I mean, the example you gave is one that's very powerful, because I think even as you shared that story, my mind immediately went, "Oh, this is where it's going." And then to hear his story, it's very powerful, because it's like it's rooted in something.
Mm-hmm.
It's not unsubstantiated. It's not. This is something he went through, and therefore it has validity. Right or wrong, whatever. But there's a purpose, and I think you're right. This country and the politics that are there is very divisive. We don't listen.
Yeah.
We hear, but we don't hear to listen. Right. We just,
Yeah, I love that. Here to listen. That sounds like a tagline.
just a reply. Somebody said it, I think, probably before, but
That's
we're
awesome.
so quick to like, just to respond back. So it's an interesting place to be, but I think I love it, because that's very powerful. I think that's very powerful, and something for me to take. And it's being open-minded to the fact that, oh, hey, I didn't think about that before.
Totally.
That's something I need to take away.
Yeah, it's really
Right.
good.
And work on. So,
Yeah.
Guys, these are all great qualities and principles that we can build and better ourselves with. So hope you're taking notes. If not, you're going to check the show notes or read the book.
Yeah.
Pick your poison.
Pick
But
your poison.
Pick your poison. But there's still one more, and that's the soulfulness of it. And
Yeah.
I was intrigued by the fact that you included soulfulness, because people don't really include persuasion and soulful together.
Right. Yep. And so to me, the micro idea of, persuasion is, you can look at it in the macro, you can look at it in the micro, but persuasion all day long, we're all in acts of persuasion, whether it's persuading to get on your show, or, you persuading to get a desk or get coverage for your work, or whatever it might be. We're in these moments all day long of persuasion, both in our personal life and professional life. And the soulful twist is really this idea of, persuasion's great, and you can be a better persuader. But the soulful piece, the fourth principle, is really this idea of striving to be inspirational and do more than think about yourself. Like, get out of your me shell and try to really think about the world at large, and what skills do you have? What could you be doing to make the world a little bit better place, or stand up for your beliefs, or do something that's beyond. And I talk about this with the brands that I work with all the time. What can you do that's beyond shareholder value or profits? What is it that you stand for that's bigger? And when you are like that, you gain a bigger audience, more consumers, more people talk about your brand, they feel like they want to buy your brand because they know you stand for more. A company we work with is Ben and Jerry's.
Mm-hmm.
You know Ben and Jerry's is doing a lot. You know they stand up for what they believe in. They have a soul. They're not just ice cream. They're ice cream plus they're selling the ideals that they believe in, and that is way more powerful than just selling ice cream. And the same thing applies to people. It's way more powerful for me to be an ad man that does pro bono work to combat sexual assault
Mm-hmm.
than it is for me to just be an ad man. And that makes you more influential, more inspirational. You can write a book because you have things to talk about. But that idea of soulfulness is a really important quality, and anyone can do it. You can do it whether you're a teacher, a barber, whatever your trade is. You don't have to own a business to do it. Whatever your trade is, you can think about something that you care about and a skill you have and something that you can do that's beyond just looking out for yourself.
And, I love that you use Ben and Jerry's because they, with Black Lives Matter, they've come out and, everyone has supported Black Lives Matter. These guys have went past that and beyond with their stance and their response, right? And they've done that throughout the years. There's historical evidence of them standing up, whenever there's been an incident, right? They've been authentic in that sense. But, I think in the book you also mentioned like Muhammad Ali and how he stands up, right? He's a great example. And now you have actors like John Boyega who stood up and led a protest in London and talked about, I may not be able to work again after doing this, but it was important for me to be here and help. And it's like going beyond who you are. And like you said, getting outside of the me shell.
Yeah, I know. It's great. Muhammad Ali is such a good such a good pull.
Right.
Because we always think about him as the most famous boxer. Mm-hmm. He's the GOAT. And yes, he was a great boxer. The reason why he is, at this higher sort of immortal level and why there's quotes of him everywhere, and, he's revered, is because he lost 5 years of boxing to protest going to the Vietnam War because it didn't fit his beliefs. It's not a war he believed in. He gave up his whole career, became destitute for a while, didn't box for 5 years, came back to boxing in his early 30s, but at that time that's pretty old for a boxer, which it wouldn't be necessarily now, but at the time it was old. He missed out on like his prime years of boxing, but he's still known as the greatest of all time because people know that what he stood for was much bigger than him as a boxer. You know, he stood for his beliefs, and he stood up for what he believed in. He stood up for Black rights. He stood up for Muslim rights. He really, really fought. And at the time, he wasn't thought of as like the greatest. People were against him for speaking out against the Vietnam War, but he did, and he relied on his principles, and he was a soulful persuader.
I think there's something about principles, as you said, right? And just sometimes I think people think incorrectly that they have to deny those principles, those core beliefs, in order to go further. And I think the soulful principle that you're talking about actually says, hey, you got to do the opposite. Stay true to who you are and stand by that. And I mean, I think getting outside of the me shell is difficult.
Yeah, it is.
Already, right? I mean, because oftentimes we see this and we see examples of it, but what you're saying is that anybody can do it.
Anyone can do it. I have a friend who, I talk about this in the book too, but I have a friend who was a barber in London, and he, his name's Josh Combs, and he Combs barber. It's pretty funny, but he was like, all right, so that's it. Yeah. He was like, that's it. I'm a barber. I'm just going to be a barber. That's like what my life is. Like, that's my career.
That's the way he went.
That's the way he went. And then one day at lunch, he started cutting a homeless person's hair. And then the next day at lunch, he cut another homeless person's hair. And then he took a day off of work and did it on the streets of London. Then he took a week off of work. And before he knew it, his job was going around the world cutting people's on the streets hair. to give them a new outlook on themselves, to make them feel better, to have someone to chat with for an hour and talk to and swap
Wow.
stories with. And then he got paid to speak about this. He got pretty big on Instagram, and he got paid to speak about this journey that he went on. And he made much more money doing that than he ever did just as a barber.
Wow.
But he took a skill of cutting hair and turned it into being much more soulful and doing something to give back. And that's what I mean. It can turn into things you don't really think about, but by doing that simple act of that one day going with his tools to cut a homeless person's hair really, changed his whole trajectory.
What's great about that story is I'm sure if he had a business partner or someone who managed his business, be like, what are you doing? You have to focus
Right.
here. That's where the money's coming from, right?
That's true.
Especially if you take a full day off.
Yeah.
What do you do there? But to stand by the principles. And that's, I think, the beautiful thing about kind of stepping outside of your own shell. And when you chase your dream, whatever it is, sometimes it may not be that dream, but it's something you're passionate about, and you chase that, you never know where it's going to go. You never know what will result in it. Has writing the book for you gone the way you expected it? Or has it kind of thrown you in a way that you're like, I had no idea this was going to happen?
It's I'm kind of still digesting that, but it took me 3 years. It was a really rewarding experience because it crystallized a lot of my thoughts that I then had to put down, encapsulate on paper the way I work and what I think and my beliefs. And so it was really just that aspect would be rewarding enough. I didn't realize that you also, when you put out a book, you then have to market the book. Like
As
I didn't
an ad man.
Yeah, I didn't. I know, but I'm not a writer, and I've never put out a book before, but I sort of forgot that part. And so now I'm on like 3.5-year journey, and I realize that that's a lot of more work than I thought. But I've met so many people. I wouldn't have met you if it wasn't for the book, and I really have enjoyed not just focusing on, having a side hustle where I'm not just focusing on my day job, but really trying to do something that I believe in, that I can go around and talk about. So it's been highly rewarding for me. Yeah.
Well, I gotta say, this feels like your soulful part in the work you're doing with this book, and how because I think a lot, one of the reasons I started this podcast was I had someone close to me who was denying something they were good at because they'd been encouraged to go a different path. And so for me, that your pillars resonated, and it's something I think more people need to hear about and do, because it makes them a better person. It makes them more authentic and true to themselves. And you don't know who's going to change the world and how. But like you said, the more you are yourself, it's going to be awesome to see.
The more chance you have of changing the world, the more you're yourself, definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
Jason, I have had such a blast talking to you. Thank you so much.
Been awesome. Yeah.
For jumping on. I appreciate it. If these guys want to connect with you, how can they find you?
I'm at Jason_Harris on Instagram and Twitter. And I have a website that's just thesoulfulart.com.
I'd love it. Any last words for these guys?
No, I mean, be a dream chaser. That's my last word.
You guys heard him. Go out, chase your dreams. Thanks again, man. And guys, that was Jason Harris. You see what I mean? He is so persuasive, soulfully persuasive. Honestly, awesome thing he's doing. I think it's something that can help us become better people. We need to evaluate ourselves. We need to examine what we're doing. It's a great time for those who are stuck indoors to take some time to look into ourselves and see if we can't be the kind of individual who is original, generous, empathetic, and soulful, right? Yeah. See if you can do that. Imagine how chasing your dreams changes when you start incorporating these philosophies and characteristics into your life. It becomes more enjoyable, for sure. All right. So what I want you to do, today's call of action, I want you to read the book. The link is in the show notes. It is an affiliate link, just as a FYI, but it's in the show notes. Look it up if you want to get it in a different way. Jason Harris' book, The Art of Soulful Persuasion. Highly recommend it. It is for those who are following my 21 book challenge. It is in the book list. Yeah. So definitely check that out. And remember, guys, you can find all of the show notes over on the show notes page at amyj21.com/episode 230. That's episode 230. All right, guys, I'm going to let you go have the rest of your day back. Remember, till next time, don't stop. Keep chasing. Bye.